let's see, round 16 trades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another video from A Man Talks NRL SuperCoach. It's been a few days since I've actually put out another video. Work has been crazy and we've had a bit of a break from the NRL, so I've been taking a bit of a break myself. But yeah, this weekend going back into lockdown here in Sydney, really missing my NRL footy. But tomorrow we've got State of Origin and obviously a lot more SuperCoach to come in the next week. So I thought in this video just go through my team, what my initial thoughts have been on trades. If you guys don't follow me on Twitter already, I've been putting up quite a few different trade scenarios based on different news that we're hearing throughout the week on certain players and players returning that might impact their role in the team. So I've been putting a few potential trades that I might do, and I'll talk a little bit in this video as well about whether we're going to use all 5 of the trades, we're going to save any of them, and maybe the general strategy I might try to adopt. But we'll get into a proper trade targets video next week when we get Team List Tuesday news. So I thought I would start off just giving a quick overview of the team and how we're going. Long story short, not too well, not getting in Tom Trbojevic. I know you guys are probably sick of me hearing this all the time. Not getting in Tom has just absolutely killed my season. And yeah, he's just racking up the points for fun. Manly racking up the points for fun in that last week game against the Titans. 50 points they basically scored in the second half alone. I think it was 48, something like that. It was pretty ridiculous. And yeah, he's just an absolute tear. I am recording this pre-State of Origin, as I mentioned, so we'll see if there's any kind of injuries, updates and things like that to any players that we have to take into account next week. But I thought I'd just give a bit of a general update at the moment. So hooker position, again, not much has changed here. Jaden Brayley and Connor Watson, I still think a lot of people are going to be running with these two, and with Harry Grant again, missing Origin 2, and it seems like he's not going to be coming back, I think, until round 18 or 19. It definitely seems like he's had a lot of injury concerns so far this season. I think he's the one that everyone wants to go for. So hooker really is a dead position. I think you got Reid Marnie, but he's also not coming back until about round 18 as well. So really, I think in the interim, I think you're really just going to keep running with these guys, and I think Brandon Smith probably is the best person to go for. I know I didn't jump on him a few weeks back, and he's done really well. So I think any owners of him, obviously he's been a very handy place in your hooker in your position. And with Harry Grant having all these injuries, I think Brandon Smith definitely going to probably keep profiting. So I don't even think he's the worst buy, but he's not in my current plans at the moment. Front row forward, I think a lot of people are going to be having issues here as well. I mean, I definitely do as well, with Tevita Pangai Jr. now getting a suspension, which I do believe is 3 weeks. But also, again, the Broncos telling him that he's not wanted by the club anymore. We'll have to see whether or not, we'll see if we get any news whether he goes to a new club, and which club is it, and also maybe if that gives us an indication of what kind of role he's actually going to have in that team. In terms of whether he's a hold or a sell, it really also, I think, depends on the makeup of your front row forward. If you've got ample cover, I think he's still definitely okay to hold, because if you are able to cover that, he definitely has shown some high upside, at least towards the beginning of the season, and is definitely someone you want to have in your season ending team. But for me, I don't have as much cover. I've got Christian Welch, who hasn't been doing amazing either. And then I've got like Spencer Liniu and Tom Flegler, which is again not fantastic. I mean, Flegler might potentially get extra minutes without Pangai in the team, but I can't really bank on that. So I think definitely one of my 5 trades will probably be revolving around the front row forward, which, to be honest, front row forward has such little upside so far this season that I'm trying to minimize actually now moving forward the amount of trades that I do there, because I've only got 13 left, as you can see, and not very much money actually, 4.8k. So we'll get into that a little bit later in terms of how I might try to create some money. But yeah, Tevita Pangai is a bit of an issue, and I'm leaning more towards actually selling, just because my front row forward apart from that is very weak, and I think I definitely need to bring in someone who can hold the fort down a little bit over there. Against second row forward, forwards is definitely some area that towards after the beginning of the season I've definitely tried to steer away from, in terms of trying to focus all my energy, because we've seen all the points really come in the backs and the centers, and we'll see my centers in just a little bit as well. I've got Isaiah Papali'i, Tohu Harris and Josh Curran. Tohu Harris and Papali'i, fantastic. They can be there for the rest of the season. Papali'i, I'll eventually try to get up to my front row forward as well. If I trade out Tevita Pangai Jr., swapping Papali'i up to front row forward and getting in a good second row forward is probably going to be the way that I'm going to go. And then on the bench there, I've got Mitch Barnett, Ryan James and Ben Trbojevic. So yeah, not really too much to smile at about there. I mean, Mitch Barnett, with last weekend's games, I had a horrible internet connection. I was out and I wasn't able to see actually the change to the Newcastle Knights team, that he was actually playing on an edge. If I had known that, I would have actually put the reserve on him. Instead, I had it on Connor Watson. So Mitch Barnett did pretty well with a 64. But yeah, moving forward, obviously I don't think he's going to be a long-term hold. But to be honest, I'm actually leaning to maybe just keeping him in my bench, not as a play in the 17, but just as a bit of a depth, because I know that, come towards the end of the season when trades are low, there's injuries and suspensions can continue. I think just having some guys that you can plug in if one of your star guys is injured or suspended, who can get in there and get maybe a 50-point effort is going to be really valuable. So I'm more leaning towards, if I'm trying to trade out guys who are more like, say, injured, suspended, or maybe have like a horrible draw coming up. And I think with the way that the second row forward is as well, in addition to front row forward, not so much upside. So I'm definitely okay to maybe just hold the guys that I've got there at the moment. In the halves, I've got Nathan Cleary and Matt Burton. Cleary is not going anywhere. Matt Burton, actually, in my initial kind of draft of trades that I was going to do for this round, I'd had Burton as a trade out to like an SJ or a Cody Nikorima. But in saying that, Matt Burton has done very, very well, even last week against the Roosters. Panthers, obviously, that sin bin against Takiaho really, really helped them. But Burton was able to do very well and score 76. And he's been really, really solid since I brought him in. So I'm not too keen on actually just trading him out just yet. I mean, he doesn't cover round 17 bye week, which is very important. And he is filling up this position which could be occupied by a round 17 guy like a Cody Nikorima or a Sean Johnson. But Burton's done pretty well for me so far. So I don't actually think it's such an easy argument to sell him to an SJ. But I do understand the appeal of a Sean Johnson. If you go there to my 5/8s and my... just my 5/8, Cody Walker and Josh Schuster. I mean, Cody Walker is a lock. He's not going anywhere. Looks like a perfect season keeper for the run home. Great draw, round 17, playing coverage. So, yeah, definitely going to stay there. Josh Schuster, I mean, it's not been great that he's been out for the past couple of weeks. I'm hoping that he's able to come back with a bit more of time off with this extended break between NRL rounds, that Schuster can come back and into the Manly side and hopefully benefit as well with Manly's really, really good draw coming up, cover round 17. And so I'm really hoping for that, because then I think he'll be obviously very handy in the round 17 bye week. And so that's the makeup of my halves. And at the moment, still not really sure where I'd make the trade. It would have to probably be wouldn't want to be getting rid of Schuster after holding him for these past couple of weeks. And Matt Burton's probably the main one to go for if I wanted to fill in with a round 17 guy. But as I mentioned, I'm not sure if I actually want to be pulling the trigger on that. Now, in my centre wing, you can tell that I have done quite a few trades throughout the season. I think on centre wing, as we started to see that there's going to be so many high point scoring guys in the centre wing position, given the big blowout games that we're seeing in the actual NRL. So you can see that it's pretty good in my opinion, just on looking at it. So we've got Nicho Hynes, Alex Johnston, Brian To'o, Matt Ikuvalu. I mean, Hynes, Johnston and To'o not going anywhere anytime soon. Well, Hynes really depends on the return of Pappenhausen. Matt Ikuvalu, he's been okay for me, but yeah, he's had games where he has really, really low scores, like against Penrith last week when he only got 17. Doesn't have the greatest base stats, but really hoping for them some high attacking upside. And in round 17, the Roosters play the Bulldogs, so I'm really hoping he pays off for me in round 17 and in the run home. On the bench, well, I haven't actually finished all the substitutions, but we got Ruben Garrick in last week. I did mention in my trades that I was going to get in Garrick and potentially Reece Walsh, and that's the way I went. As you can see then, fullback, I did get Reece Walsh and Ruben Garrick. We'll touch on Walsh just in a little bit. And then I've still got Nofaluma and Joseph Suwali. So Dane Laurie was the one that I traded out of Laurie and Nofaluma. Laurie actually outscored Nofaluma, but they both had really high break even, so I don't think that was really, both of them could have been very easy solves. I just decided to go for Laurie as he cost a little bit more, and I was able to get a little bit more money to afford a Ruben Garrick. Obviously, Garrick did amazing last week with 156. I mean, he was on like 2 points at halftime, which was crazy. But then, 4 tries and all the goal kicking. I was watching the first half and I was like, you're losing more points from the missed goal kicks than actually getting them, which was really frustrating. But he obviously got his radar back. Tommy Turbo kept setting him up and he ended up with a massive score. I think Garrick is still worth the money in my opinion. 728k. He's 156 last week, and he's averaging like 94 ever since Turbo's been in the team. If we just have a quick look at the break even as well, he's got a break even of 10. So there is a very, very big chance that he's going to keep skyrocketing up in price. So I think if you can actually afford the funds, I think I would just get him. I feel like it's with Manly's draw and the way that they're scoring points at will, I think Garrick is a very safe bet to get 80 points a game for the rest of the season in as a minimum, because he has that really good goal kicking base when he's actually hitting them, as well as some decent base, and he hopefully will play at fullback in round 17. So I think hopefully he's a good pickup, and I think I would definitely be advocating for him as a buy in the centre wing position. On my fullbacks, again, the glaring omission here is no Tommy Turbo. I've got Clint Gutherson and Reece Walsh brought in Reece Walsh last week, I just thought, it's in hindsight, obviously it was a bit of a dumb risk, to be honest, because there was some talk about Walsh getting picked in the Maroon squad. But I thought, surely not. Surely they're not going to do this. So I thought I went with him. It was a good game against the Knights. Ended up being one of the lowest scoring games of the entire season. I think it was like 10 points to 6. He had a line break, but yeah, only a 30-pointer. I was really banking on the fact that, good game against the Knights, and obviously a few decent games up for the Warriors too. Hopefully plays round 17. That was the main reason that I got him in, and he had a negative break even. So I thought he'd be a good potentially stepping stone to maybe like a gun fullback for the run home. Obviously, it hasn't paid off so much in this round. Just on Walsh, he has been actually ruled out now of State of Origin 2. The reports are they had a bit of hamstring tightness in the captain's run. So unfortunately for him, he's actually not going to be playing. As a selfish Reece Walsh owner, I'm actually thinking this is better news because hopefully he doesn't get battered by the Blues. And so he's hopefully able to, just have some time to rest up for me and hopefully do really well for me next week. Obviously, we have to see the extent of this hamstring tightness, but from the reports that I've seen, it doesn't seem too serious. They're just erring on the side of the caution here, the Maroons. So yeah, that's my fullbacks at the moment. Gutherson obviously been doing really, really well. So that's the team, guys. What I thought I'll get into now is who I'm potentially looking at as trade outs and who are my trade-in targets. So I thought I'd just quickly get into the talk of how many trades should you be using this round in the 5-trade week. Look, my thinking is that I think as many as necessary to help clean up your team in the best way possible. Obviously, that takes into account a lot of factors. I've got 13 trades coming into this week, and I am potentially looking at using all 5, maybe 4 or 5. I think is the way I'm going to go. So I think it's going to be a really opportune time to hopefully just clear out some guys that I'm not going to want for the rest of the season, or create some money, bring in some guys who will cover round 17, and also hopefully potentially be season-long keepers. That is very risky, as there will be like 8 trades left to navigate what is probably, I think, like 9 rounds of footy, which is really, really risky. And I think that's definitely something I have to be, really careful about. I don't want to be burning so many trades, because that still won't leave me with enough trades. Probably, well, it might leave me potentially with enough trades to bring in some remaining guys that I want to get into the team. So yeah, I have to be really kind of tactful is not a word, tactical about the kind of trades that I'm doing. So I've just got here potentially a scenario, one of my scenarios where I've got trade outs of Clint Gutherson, Tavita Pangai, Nofaluma, Nico Hines, and Spencer Leniu. So the reason that potentially Gutherson is on the chopping block is that coming up against the Panthers in round 16, that is a tough game. And Gutherson's draw for the rest of the season isn't the best. If we have a quick look at it here. So if we see that here, it's Panthers in round 16, then they have the bye in round 17. Round 18, though, is a bit scary. They've got a very, very nice game against the Titans who are leaking a lot of points. But if you look at the run home for that, Raiders might be slightly improved. Roosters, tough. South's tough. Manly, I would say that's tough now as well. Cowboys, decent game. But then Melbourne, very, very tough. And Panthers, very, very tough again. So they're playing, the Panthers twice. They're playing the Storm. They're playing the Roosters South. That is a tough draw, I think, for the Parramatta Eels. And Gutherson, while he's been very, very good servant for me in my SuperCoach team since I brought him in, he just doesn't quite have that same upside as we're seeing Tom Trbojevic get, essentially. I mean, Gutherson, I think for me so far, he's topped with 140, and that included scoring like a double, getting a couple of try assists. It just seems like Tom, though, just gets that for fun. I think he's had 3 scores already over 150, and he just seems to rack up the points at ease. So Gutherson, I don't think, is in the same category. And so for that reason, trading out Gutherson hopefully does unlock quite a bit of money in my team. And to be honest, I think Tom Trbojevic is someone I'm going to be looking to bring in this week. Just given that being able to use 4 or 5 trades and navigate your money and your funds a little bit around will help me actually get in Tom Trbojevic, because I feel like later on in the season, say he might potentially play round 16, miss round 17, and maybe not play round 18 as well. I could theoretically wait until round 19, but this round 16 game is against the Bulldogs, which is super, super scary, not owning Tom. I mean, it's been scary this whole time so far. You could argue that. But I think, later on in the season, if he has a really big game again against the Bulldogs, he could be even more out of reach in terms of price. So I think while I am able to kind of shift around my team and get him in, I think I should just get him in and play him safe, because he's definitely someone I'm going to want for the rest of the season. So I've got Tom in there now as one of my trade-in targets, and he would be at fullback. Another guy I'll mention is Tavita Pangai Jr. Obviously, gave some thoughts on him already. I don't think I've got the kind of necessary front row forward coverage to really cover his position. And so for me, he's a bit of a trade out. But again, this is only early thinking. If we get any updated news, or maybe a club that he goes to, and any news of his role, that will definitely change. This is just my initial thought. And obviously, all these scenarios are probably going to likely change after Teamless Tuesday. So in this scenario, I'd probably flick Isaiah Papali'i up to front row 4 just to kind of bolster that position. And what I would actually do with Tavita is just trade in like a second row forward, and I think a great one to trade in is Corey Harionara. Cover round 17. He's been spoken about a lot by myself, and round 17 playing option. He scored 79 last week, and he's been doing really well the past few weeks. So I think he's a very easy decision to get into the team, and that will add a round 17 player. So really good there. Next, I've got Nofaluma. Nofaluma, this could vary whether he stays in the team or doesn't. It also really depends, I think, hand in hand with Nicho Hynes. So with Nofaluma, I think he hasn't shown that much so far this season. I've brought him in really based on his last season potential and not really, obviously, the Tigers got absolutely pumped by the Storm. I watched that game again on the highlights and I just thought this is ridiculous how easy the Storm were just carving them up. And he still came over with a respectable 42 because he got a bit of a junk time try. The Tigers run home at the back end of the season is really good. So that is one potential thing that's leaning towards maybe me keeping Nofaluma. But potentially Nofaluma might have to go just to create some extra funds in my team if I want to do the trades that I basically want to do. So in trading out Nofaluma, I'd probably go for a Matt Tomoko just to create some funds. Hopefully he sticks around in the Raiders lineup, covers round 17 as well. Though we'll add not a great number, but it's another warm body to add for round 17. The only downside of that is Nofaluma is so cheap. He's lost so much money since I bought him in, 406k, but that still would be creating 200k. So I think it's an okay trade and target Tomoko. And so he's in now. Now with Nicho Hynes, this definitely is a bit more of a complicated situation. I really think it just depends on when Pappenhausen's back. Keep it. Well, it's not that complicated. It's pretty simple. With Hynes, I think the way that he's been going when he's been playing at fullback in your center wing, is really invaluable. I think the amount of points that he's scoring. He scored 83, which seems low after the Storm put on 66, but you'd obviously take an 83 in your center wing every day of the week. So for me, for Ryan Pappenhausen, there has been some reports that he's coming back in round 16 versus the Roosters, but then I've seen other ones where I think the Storm CEO has come out and said he'll be back round 20. If he comes back in round 16, then obviously Hynes I think is a sell, and Teamless Tuesday will tell us this, so that is hopefully good news. And in round 20, if that's when Pappenhausen's coming back, well, that's just when I'm going to be selling Hynes. The way I see it, yes, he's very expensive. He would obviously create a lot of money. I think really I would only sell him if I was desperate to create some money to do my trades. But for me, trading out like a Gutherson will hopefully will enable me to get me there. But trading out Hynes, I think for me, is points are too valuable, and I think I'd be prioritizing the points over the cash that you can generate. But say hypothetically, Pappenhausen's back for round 16 and Hynes gets relegated back to the bench, he'll be a trade out in my team. And then what I would do in this situation is I've got plenty of decent coverage already in the center wing. So what I would actually do is through Ben Trbojevic, I would actually swap. I would be able to bring in another second row forward for Nicho Hynes' money. And in this case, I've got a few more options, So at the moment, I've got outstanding Spencer Leniu and Nicho Hynes. I could obviously go for maybe another front row forward. Obviously I could with Spencer Leniu and a second row forward. So, maybe I could go for a Dave Fifita. And bringing in Dave Fifita would leave me with 353k for a front row forward, which to be honest is not much in that real price range. Takiyaho is probably the cheapest kind of guy that I might go for. And he's 399k. So bring in Fifita. I could do it this week, and obviously that helps me set me up for the long term because he's a season keeper. The thing with Fifita is that he's got a pretty high break even as well. His break even is 131, as you can see there. So I think there definitely is still room for Fifita to drop down further in price. And so for me, Fifita, he is coming off the bench in Origin. That hopefully means in round 16 he is playing extra minutes, but I still think that he might still go down in price just a little bit more. So I'm leaning towards Fifita being actually a bit more of a maybe around 18, 19 trade-in and not forcing him into the team just yet. So instead of Fifita, I could even just go for an Angus Crichton. Obviously, again, he doesn't cover round 17, but he's been doing really well the past few weeks. But they are coming up against Melbourne this round, so that is a bit of a tougher matchup. But yeah, even Angus Crichton is someone I could go for. But yeah, I haven't fully thought through at the moment who I might want to lean to getting in. What I could do in my front row forward is actually go for a Takiyaho, who at 399k I think could be really good value. I did trade him out just earlier a few weeks ago to bring in Flegler, and I could have held in Takiyaho at that time. But in my opinion, I think trading out Takiyaho at the time made sense because that's what enabled me to get Nicho Hynes, which has been a really smart move. So I'm happy to bring in back Takiaho. I mean, he doesn't have the goal kicking benefit, which really it doesn't help his point scoring. But I think, he seems like he's back over his rib injury. I think he potentially might be playing a few bigger minutes now, since I think they're going to really be relying on him moving forward. So Takiaho, even just on his base stats, might be going around the 50 to 55. Another consideration is also like an Adam Fanua-Blake, who at 418k is still decent value. But with Adam Fanua-Blake, I might wait a week if I want to go on Fanua-Blake. But say hypothetically, if I do go for like a Takiaho, that leaves me without now it's like 655k, and I could bring in like a Brandon Smith if I want to go for a Smith. As I mentioned, he could be a good option at hooker, although in this instance I would be getting him in at a second row forward. I'm just off Angus Crichton actually, just looking at those numbers, which is a bit frustrating. Instead of trading out Spencer Leniu, I think actually if I traded out Ryan James, that might actually enable me to get Angus Crichton. So on second thoughts, that actually might be a better option. But yeah, that's a lot of money to play around with. But this is definitely one scenario I'm looking at. This would be using all 5 trades. And as you can see, I think that really is a bit of a decent clean out of the team. I'm getting rid of like a Spencer Leniu, who's not going to really be doing too well for me. Gutherson, I think, will have a tough run coming home, so I think I'm happy to get rid of him. Tevita Pangai Jr. is going to be away for quite a while. And so, and obviously bringing in guys like Corey Harunaira to cover round 17 is going to be really valuable. Tomoko hopefully covers round 17, same with Takiaho. Tom Trbojevic, I don't need to say any more about him. And apart from that, that would actually keep my team in pretty good stead, I think, actually for round 17 coverage. Walsh hopefully might be playing, so that'd be 1. I've got Garrix 2, Tomoko 3, Swali 4, Ikuvalu 5, Johnson 6, and then I have Cody Walker, Schuster 7, 8, and then we'd have CHN 9, Tohu Harris 10, Curran 11. If Ryan James gets a run in that round, then maybe 12 in total. And then we've got Takiaho, Takiaho, he'd be bringing up to 13. So that's 13 guys for round 17, which I don't think is a bad number, to be honest. I had 13 in round 13 in round 13. And so that would give me up to 26 in total across the 2 bye weeks. So overall, I wouldn't be too, upset with that. I think they'd be pretty decent. So I am still bringing in guys like Tom Trbojevic for the run home. And as I mentioned, I'll quickly do the scenario just now. And yeah, if I do trade out Ryan James, 674k, that would actually enable me to get Angus Crichton, or I could just keep that trade up my sleeve, and then instead, hopefully, maybe Dave Fifita comes down in price to around that mark, and I could do maybe like a trade to Dave Fifita instead, with the money that I would have left over in the bank. So that is one way I'm playing potentially this round. And yeah, that's kind of the way I'm leaning at the moment. Let's say hypothetically I put in Angus Crichton. I think that would leave the side in a pretty good shape. I mean, hooker is obviously not that great, but at the moment I don't think the overall hooker position is that strong. Front row forward, again, not great. Takiaho and Welch actually was my round 1 front row forward, so a bit of a throwback there, but I think they could be okay enough. They do a steady job, but not amazing. To be honest, I don't think front row forward is that much of a consideration. Second row forward would be pretty decent. Papali'i in there. Obviously, it'd be ideal to get him at front row forward, but that's fine. I can still have him in there with Crichton, Tohu Harris, Corey Harunaira, Curran Barnett. That would be actually really solid. And instead, probably what I would do long term is maybe potentially get rid of like a Josh Curran or a Mitch Barnett to Dave Fifita. That might be a good way to go about it as well. And then again, the halves, no change with Matt Burton to SJ. I think I might maybe do that in the next round. Although Sharks coming up against the Broncos, they could do very well there. 5'8", not going to change. And then my centre wing would be pretty decent. Obviously, I wouldn't have Ben Trbojevic as captain, but it would be Garrick, Johnston, Ikuvalu, To'o, Suwali, and Tomoko on the reserves as well. And so maybe losing Nofaluma is not ideal, but then we've got Trbojevic and Reece Walsh in the fullbacks, and obviously having Tommy Turbo there would be really amazing. So guys, that's going to wrap up the video. Hopefully just wanted to give a bit of a quick summary on my team, how I'm kind of thinking about approaching this week. Hopefully if you found that useful, you can apply that to your own team. We will get more into this next round with updated Team List Tuesday news, and obviously a lot of this stuff could change. This is just my initial thoughts on how I'm factoring in terms of when I'm looking at my overall team, how am I potentially going to prioritize guys that I want to trade out, some guys that I can bring in who won't cover who I'm going to want for the rest of the season, maybe like an Angus Crichton, Tom Trbojevic, and bring in also a mix of guys who I think will be very handy in round 17, such as Takiaho, Corey Harunaira. So that's the video, guys. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, we'd really appreciate a thumbs up on the video, and please subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already, as I put more videos out throughout the 2021 SuperCoach season. But until then, see you in the next video.